Hello and welcome. Today we will talk about transfers and how they need to be configured in MyRapidi. First of all, we have to go to transfers and then click on new. As soon as you do that, you will see this layout here that consists of several sections. So we have the general section, we have the source control, then we have the table link, then the mapping, and any filter source that you want to use. So let's start with the first section. So the first section of a transfer will display this type of information. So if we click on the pencil here, you need to add a code. A code is a naming convention. So you can add something that will tell you what this transfer is about. Let's say, for example, we just want to add something like this, customer BC Salesforce add. So it has to be very short and it doesn't have to provide a lot of details. You can add more details under description. So under description, you can go ahead and add more details. So then you get more information about the transfer. Then the status. The status usually is implementing or testing. So you can choose one of the other if you are working on this specific transfer. As soon as you think it's done, you can mark it as ready. So you have a few options here that you can use as soon as you have more progress. Then we have groups. Groups are a way to organize everything into one place. We have also a separate video on that, but just to provide you with a reminder, whenever you have a lot of transfers that are related to, let's say, your customer information, then you can always put everything under the same group and call it customer. If you have the same thing for orders, you have a lot of transfers that are related to orders, then you can do the same. Have a new group called order, and then everything is in the same place. So by using groups is definitely a good way to keep everything organized, and then you can make sure that you have visibility over the transfers that you have configured for that specific type of data. Then we have source. So source is the system that we read from. So then you know the direction. So you will have something like, let's say, customer data going from Business Central to Salesforce or any other system to any other system, basically. Before you go in and add the source here or the destination, you have to set up the connections for these two systems. So setting up the connections is a prerequisite. It has to be done before you go in and set up your transfer. Then we have, in both cases, we have the source layout and the destination layout. So in this case, they refer to the system and the data that's being available. So you can say you are reading data from Business Central. So you are using that connection to read from Business Central, and then you will be using the same connection as the layout. So the layout meaning that you get access to the schema that's available in your Business Central environment. And this applies to any other system. So in my case, I would say I'm going to set up the group as customers. The source would be, I will add Business Central, and then the destination would be Salesforce. And then we move to the next one, which would be the source table and destination table. Of course, when you want to set up a transfer, you have to think about the table that we're going to use or the object. In this case, I would say mine is called customer card. It's usually the same in all the environments. And then in Salesforce will be called account. So I have defined the tables. I have defined the connections, the source destination. So that part is good. The only thing that you see here would be the link storage. The link storage is something separate that can be included here or not. So it's up to you. We have a separate video on this one. So if you want to use it, then you can go ahead and set it up first, and then you go back to your transfer and include it. On the right side, we have the actions. In order for a transfer to be active, you have to select the enabled checkbox. So then you can have it active and ready to be used. And then you have to think about the actions that you want to set up. In this case, you can say, I want to create new customers, right? So I can do that. And then if I'm using add, meaning creating new customers in combination with this one, then we are triggering what's called the upsert functionality, meaning that we are sending everything to Salesforce, and then based on the data that you have in Salesforce, the account will be created or not. So it's very important to make sure that you don't have duplicates. As soon as you have that done, you can click on save and you are done with the first section. So we will close this one and we go to the following one. Source control is very important. So here you have to make sure that you do use timestamps in any of the systems. Salesforce, for example, has a native timestamp, which is always available. So you can definitely use that. Other systems, such as the ERP systems, they don't really have that, and it's not available in the UI. So that means that you will need to publish it and make sure that it's available on that specific page. With regards to that, we have instructions and we have detailed steps, and you can use them in order to publish the timestamp. We do think that using a timestamp is definitely important, and by using a timestamp, you can make sure that the overall performance of the transfer will be good. If you don't use it, then there will be more time needed for the transfer to read all the information from the source system and transfer to the destination system only what's new. So we have to make sure that those are being published. So if you have a timestamp, then you go ahead and publish it and you add it here. And then, of course, you have other options. One is a timestamp, which belongs to the system, to the source system. And then we have also a Rapidi functionality, which is called source mirror. So that's something that will do the timestamps job, so to speak, meaning that we'll be able to read all the data, compare, see what's new, and then send to the destination system only the new or updated records. But again, it would be best to use your own system timestamp. And then, for example, here we have transferred field and store new ID. These are functionalities that are being used to actually save the newly records ID into the source system. So if you're sending a customer from Business Central to Salesforce, you also want to save back into BC the Salesforce ID that belongs to that customer. So you can do that with the store new ID functionality. And also you can use transferred field. For example, as soon as the record is created, you want to get a confirmation of that. So the transfer field can actually populate a daytime field with the date and time when the record has been created. So it's a way to get confirmation about your transfers. And of course, for every section, including the one above, you have a question mark that you can click on, and then you will get explanations for each of these fields and how they need to be used. And commit per, of course, here you would need to use it correctly. So if you are using store new ID field or transfer field, you would use commit per 1. And then if you don't use any of them, and then you just have a timestamp here added, you will use commit per 200, which is standard. So that's usually how they are being set up. As soon as you have done that, you save it, and then you move on to the next one. So we have tabling. So here you would add the primary keys belonging to those records in both systems. So you would have the customer on one hand, which is in Business Central, and then the account in Salesforce. Every table has a primary key, so this is the place you can define it. You can define more than one primary key. So if you have more, you can do that. There's really not an issue with that. And then, of course, let's say if in Business Central, your customer table has 3 primary keys, you can add them. And then make sure that the data is being sent to Salesforce. The next part is field list mapping. So here, this is the place where you would actually map the fields. So you simply click on new, and then you add your fields one by one and have them mapped. Of course, in order for you to be able to map the fields, you need to make sure that the connection is being set up correctly, right? And then you have access to all that data. If you are writing here and you are searching for a specific field and you cannot find it, you can always try like this. So you are using the % and then you write a keyword or something that's part of that field. And then Rapidi will give you all the possible options that are available in your system. Of course, when you are mapping fields, you have to make sure that you are mapping the correct ones. And in order to check for fields, for example, you are not finding a field, so you want to see where that is, you have this option here, Browse Table Layout. So this is the layout of this specific page. So you have the customer card in Business Central, and then you get to see everything that's available on that specific table. So if I will search for name, then I get to see different options, and this is what I can use. If your field is not here, it means that it has not been published or it's not available on that specific table. So you have to publish it and then come back and add the field into the mapping. So this is a way to search for fields and make sure that you have them there. Of course, you'll have a one-to-one mapping, but also you can have, let's say, one-to-many, so to speak. So in that case, if you want to map the same field to a different destination field, you can do that. If you want to have some sort of formula, then you can also add it here. Formulas will always be added on the left side of the mapping list. And here you indicate what kind of formula you want. And then in the destination, the field where the outcome should go. We also have a separate page on formulas, so you can check that out and you can see what the syntax would be and how they need to be added. And of course, here you have different options. You have the option to create a new line. You can delete it. You can build a new list. You can build a new mapping from source, from destination, and then you can browse the table layout. So you can do that as well. So as soon as you're done with the changes here, then you always have to activate changes. So you have to make sure that as soon as you start working on table links here on the mapping and then filter source, use the activate changes button in order to save your work. So let's say you've added all your mappings. And then if you want to disable anything, you have here this option, which is called disable line. So it will be grayed out, meaning that it will not be sent over to the destination system. If you want to delete it, you have the delete row button here, and you can use it. Then the last section is we have filter source delimitations. So here you can add filters. So for example, if you want to send new customers from Business Central to Salesforce, but you do want to make sure that they meet a specific criteria, then this is the place where you would do that. So under the field name, you simply add the field in question. And then here as the filter, you would indicate what the filter would be. So for example, you can say the customer status has to be active. So you can say customer status here and then filter customer status equals active, so to speak. So in most cases, you would use SQL queries as a way to set up your filters. But of course, it very much depends on the system, on the version, and what type of queries it allows. So you have to also be careful about that. If you are setting up a query here, if you add specific SQL operators and you're getting errors saying that those are not supported, it means that Business Central and the version that you're currently on does not support that. And also this applies to other systems as well. So then you have to use the operators and the queries that are allowed by your specific ERP system. You can add a lot of filters if you want. And if you don't want to add them anymore, if you don't want to take them into account, you can simply disable the line and then you will not have that active on the transfer. So this is the last part of the transfer, and that would be it. And then you can go ahead and start testing your transfer. Of course, you can have different scenarios, but the main point is that you have to make sure that you are ready to set up a transfer. And this means setting up the connections first, making sure that you have groups in place, and also making sure that you have access to the data that you need and that you have published a timestamp. And that timestamp is visible on that specific table and can be used on this mapping here. So this is all about transfers. Hopefully you will be able to set it up yourself. If anything, you know where to find us.